simply ask, would you call on Governor Newsom to, at the moment, shut this plant down, to order it shut down?
It needs to be shut down. Yes. I mean, I haven't asked Newsom because I'd be doing the same thing we're doing with Fistra at this point, asking. We don't have that power. And I know he's kind of moving in that direction, but only he's looking at these older facilities.
It sounds like people are on their own, to be honest with you.
Yeah, kind of is.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up. Hey, it's Jordan. I'm happy to be joined by Glenn Church. You are county supervisor, Monterey County for District 2. And you, like many of your colleagues, have been actively and urgently responding since a fire broke out at the world's largest lithium battery storage plant right there in Moss Landing, which is in Northern California, right next to what they call the salad bowl of America, because so much of our greens and vegetables, a lot of fruits are produced here. To be clear, you were not in office when this plant was put in place several years ago. So you're kind of learning a lot as the community is learning. But let's just start with the immediate. There seems to be a disconnect and a mismatch because the EPA is saying their testing is not finding chemicals of concern, particularly hydrogen fluoride, which is the main toxic chemical you'd be worried about with a lithium fire. But you're hearing from residents near and far, headaches, dizziness, nosebleeds, lung burning, metallic taste. Obviously, something's not matching here. Could you talk about what you're hearing from residents versus what you're hearing from health and environmental officials?
Well, the EPA is going to come in and they're going to test some immediate concerns, the particulates, the HF, as you referred to here. And, that's only part of what could perhaps be coming out of these batteries. And so right now, what we have the state and our county environmental health, and particularly the state's Department of the California EPA, as well as the Department of Toxic Substances Control, that are coming on site to do testing for. I don't have all the particulars onto it, but what I've heard is like heavy metals and asbestos. This was a 75-year-old building that was built back prior probably to 1950 or right around that time. And, what the EPA did is very preliminary and very limited. Let's be honest about that. And what we need to do right now is to go out there and start to have more comprehensive tests. They're going to start at the site and expand out from there.
I'm glad you said that because this is not my first rodeo. I've dealt with the EPA with Flint, East Palestine, which obviously had the train derailment and detonation. And in a lot of these cases, you have kind of all clear signs very early on, which gives residents perhaps a false sense of security. I just want to play for you. This is from a hazardous waste expert I spoke with yesterday. He was a former fire chief, about the symptoms that people are expressing and them seeming to match hydrogen fluoride exposure. I'll play this.
Hydrogen fluoride, it might be one of many chemicals that were involved. But all those people, the lady with the rash on her face, consistent with hydrogen fluoride exposure. The lady with difficulty breathing and nosebleeds, irritation of the respiratory system to the point where she couldn't breathe. She might have, it sounds like she has an inhaler. She's got some underlying respiratory problem that will only get exacerbated from exposure to this stuff. And, if it's in the house and you don't air the house out, she's going to keep getting re-exposed to that. And how do you air a house out when the stuff is still out there?
So, that's a former fire chief. He was used in response to East Palestine. I also reached out to a toxicologist from NYU, Judith Zelikoff. She told me the symptoms that people have been talking about can be related to hydrogen fluoride after acute exposure. You're not a chemist. I'm not a chemist. I'm not declaring a grand conspiracy here, but do you think this may be premature that the EPA and officials are telling residents we're not finding it because we don't really know with the winds how far the plume took this?
No, I agree. And as you point, we're not chemists. Both of us have got to lean on experts, and there is some variation, as we just listened to hear from this fire chief. So quite aware. I'm learning as I go into this. It's only been a few days, and this is partly why I'm feeling relatively more comfortable that we have some more testing going on. And I understand on East Palestine. I also understand that it's a private company called CTEH that worked with them over there. That's the same company working with Vistra. I've had constituents bring this up to me and made me aware of that. So I mean, I'm aware that there are quite big mistakes there, and that is obviously something I'm hoping we can avoid here.
Yeah, and I'll just say, because unfortunately I've had to learn this quite a bit. CTEH seems to be the go-to company, the independent contractor that companies use, from Norfolk Southern to the BP oil spill to Hurricane Katrina, and time after time they don't find chemicals of concern. There's been a lot of reports about them cherry picking data, them just giving their clients, the corporations, the results they want to hear. Obviously, there's no way for you to know that, but when Vistra tells the public, well, we have an independent contractor, well, that contractor, there's been a lot of smoke, no pun intended, with them. Let me move on. I want to ask you about the farmland and the soil. I don't know if this has changed, but just a few days ago, a local Monterey official was quoted in the news on the need to test soil, stating she didn't feel there was a need. Let me play it.
There are currently no plans to test the soil or waterways.
Some would say, why not just do it now? We got EPA here, we've got the federal resources here, let's just do it. Have them do it.
I don't necessarily think that would be prudent, just to pull samples when we don't necessarily know what we're looking for at this time.
I don't know her. She might be qualified, but that concerns me, because if you don't know what you're looking for, how could you tell the public things are safe? And to the broader country, I mean, this is called the bread bowl of America. So much of our greens come from here. Wouldn't that be one of the first things you want to do? Kind of test soil and nearby and further away?
Yeah, and that is a concern, and that's part of what with the state and environmental health is going to be doing with this testing, is going out there, the water, dust, debris, everything relating to that. We do have two things we'll touch upon here. We do have one fortunate advantage of what's happened here. This is winter. Almost all fields are fallow at this point. I mean, this isn't a good time to growing those greens, not even strawberries, which are grow out here at this point. That's fortunate. Our agricultural commissioner and the local farm bureau are concerned about things, looking into it. But fortunately, we have very, very few crops on the ground at this point, and that helps on that. Plus, where this burning is actually at the north end of the valley. So it's out of the valley. It's actually in the hills of North Monterey County. So there's a lot of small farms there. I have a small farm. I don't grow food though. I have Christmas trees. We're out of Christmas tree season. So I'm, fairly comfortable with that point. But I'm, do see that concern and have quite a bit on with the soil as well as the water. The other reference into here with the comments that were made, I honestly think every time that we have, whether it's EPA scientists or somebody going out, they really need to they need to have somebody who can perhaps speak clearer. I think scientists by themselves tend to avoid absolutes and are not the best purveyors of information in situations like this. I think that's part of a problem going on there. I mean, we have to find good ways for government to communicate information out, and that's not always being done. That's why I'm trying to speak as truthfully as I know at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it. That was a pretty piss poor way of communicating. Let me ask you, I'm not an agricultural expert, but it's a good point that a lot of these crops are not in bloom during winter. But obviously the soil is not frozen, so there is potential that you could have soil contamination. So just to be clear, you are stating that there will be testing of soil, even if the crops themselves are not growing right now?
I haven't had a chance to talk with the ag commissioner yet, but obviously the farmers are really concerned about this. I mean, whether at the very least for public perception. So there's a lot of things I need to get brought up to date on. That is one of them at this point. Again, I just haven't had a time to dig deeply into that one, but I know there is concerns there.
And just so the viewers know, it seems your phone's been off the hook. I'm sure you've been talking to dozens of constituents the past week or two.
Emails, yeah. We had there was a grassroots community meeting that popped up about Tuesday, I believe it was Monday. I can't remember which day it was now.
Yeah.
But I was invited there. I was the only public official there. I spoke to them, and it was a great meeting. Frankly, it was a great meeting put together by the right people.
Thank you for the segue. I have clips from that. I want to ask you about a couple of things you said. A couple of them, frankly, were political to me in a good way. But let me play the first clip.
But what's happened here in the last 4 days should never have happened at all.
Amen.
And it can't happen again. One thing to realize is that there are a lot of really powerful forces in this state and actually in this country that want to see these batteries in place and going.
Not here.
And we don't really matter.
Somewhere else.
Biggest facility in the world was put out there, and we're the guinea pigs for it.
Yep.
And that is not the way things should be. It's become real clear to me that neither government nor industry really understands how this technology operates. We've had 4 fires in 5 years.
So there's a lot of things in there to unpack. And first, because I think some people are using this disaster as kind of a weapon if they're against green energy. To me, this is not a debate about green energy, because there's a lot of green energy or fossil fuels or whatever. There's a lot of dangerous stuff. Some of it is good, but the problem is it's not being stored or kept properly, and regulations are not being met or even followed. So I don't want to debate green energy, but I would like to ask you, who are these forces? Obviously, Governor Newsom, everyone believes, has higher political ambitions. Lithium battery and green energy has been, it's been called, his passion, pet project. It seems there's discrepancies on how this plant was approved here, that it first went for state approval rather than local approval. It seems to me it's very close where this plant is to this important agricultural area. Can you kind of talk about the forces you're talking about?
Sure, and I also want to discuss the how it was approved. I think that's important as well. But yeah, it's a rather nebulous when I say forces, of course, and of course those forces are kind of nebulous out there. But and this is perhaps where I can go back right to how this was approved, and maybe it's a good way to address that. So when the state approved it, of course, but there still was some land use zoning regulations at the local level we can do. And when this was first being rezoned in 2019 to allow for batteries, and this is an industrial site here. It was industrial site since the end of World War II. The former power plant here run by Pacific Gas and Electric was actually at one time in the 60s and 70s, the largest producer of energy on the West Coast. It produced more energy than all the power plants in LA. So they got all the transmissions lines there for doing something like this. I understand why they put it there. That's because the infrastructure is there. But when this came to the county for an application in 2019, it had absolute full support from business, labor, environmentalists, glowing media comments. We had nobody in this county who went forth to speak against it at the planning commission level. And it never was appealed to the board of supervisors, which controversial planning commission approvals generally go to. Basically, the same thing happened in 2020, except there was one environmental attorney from the Monterey area representing a small group along what is called the Elkhorn Slough, which is a national marine estuary that comes in and is a real critical environmental place for birds and other habitat. This rests right next to. So she had some complaints, appealed the Planning Commission approval, but there was an agreement made between Vistra and the county and her, I suppose, and that it never went to the Board of Supervisors again. So none of this has ever gone up to a vote. It's had minimal opposition, and the great deal, the reason that there was minimal opposition is because it's viewed, as you sort of hinted to here, green is good. You know, hey, this is green, it must be great, let's go do it. Well, green doesn't necessarily mean good. And as I pointed out onto here, this technology, well, you know, with the basic understanding, has been around since about 1970s. This is really new technology that's constantly evolving, coming in, and we do not have the regulatory process, nor does government. I mean, does private industry have the technical know-how to really control it? I mean, when you have fires like this going on, and the only way to really deal with them is to let them burn. I mean, that is not safe. That is not safe. And so,
well, I just want to point out also, this went online, I believe, in 2020.
Yeah, 2019. There's like, they've had two stages in there, to 2019, 2020. And then there's another plant right next to it, which is a smaller one run by PG&E with Tesla technology. It went on in the middle of 22. Again, that was when I was running for this office. It never went to a vote either. And they, but as you pointed out, there's been 4 fires. Yeah, they had a major fire in 2020 that shut down the highway called Shelter in Place. And so you got both facilities have had problems.
Because we've seen, elsewhere, Conyers, Georgia had a major chemical plant fire. We find out that had 3 fires before then. So is there going to be some type of investigation or looking into what caused those fires? Did Vistra, what was it demanded that Vistra, do some remediation after those fires? Because, I mean, Vistra is saying all the right things, but residents are rightly scared, and many of them don't want Vistra back online there.
I can give you a little bit of information. The first fire, and the first 2 incidents really weren't fires. They were more smoke incidents, but I'm sorry, when you have smoke, you have potential for fire. So, right. we don't want to get into a big definition of what's happening right here. I don't know really what happened the first one. I know the second one is that the fire, there's a fire suppression system that Vistra is using, and where they're shooting water onto these modules with the batteries when they overheat. And then if it starts to flame, the water comes off, because at that point, everything's lost. And so that's their fire suppression system, which did not work, obviously, this time. But what happened to them in the second incident that they had a few years back is there was smoke that was coming up, because they had these quick connect couplings, about 100,000 of them, through this fire suppression system, and it started to leak. So they fixed that by replacing these quick connect couplers, which was a bad design. Now they got something in here that's going to be a little more stable. The incident that happened to the PG&E facility with Tesla is that there was some cover that goes over the batteries that was installed badly. It was installed up, backwards, sideways, something wrong about the whole thing. And so that caused a fire there, and now they had to recorrect that. So you can see, you can have some bad engineering on real minor elements on this, or you can have something that's just purely human error that goes about, and you can have catastrophic results that come from that. And that is, that is because everything is just so complicated, and that there is no guarantee of safety. And lithium-ion batteries are a real risk that need to be looked at. As I'm trying to argue, there are other alternatives to battery storage. I think is, well, I don't know.
The bottom line is, even if you're for green energy, the proof's in the pudding. There's potential for overheating of these batteries, which has happened, which causes toxic gas and smoke plumes. Then you have toxic runoff from the fire suppression efforts. So even if, to your point, there wasn't mass opposition when this went in, 4 years later, now that residents are learning the hard way, since there's potential for human error, bad engineering, shouldn't there be a pause or just a full stoppage until this plant is inspected from head to toe, and new regulations are put in, or there's some type of community feedback process, whether they want it there, because it seems that it's not a good recipe if there's such risk for fire. We're not even getting into the drought in California. So if, let's say, the fire happens, you have very flammable plants there. We know what's going on with the wildfires in LA. To put it simply, should this plant be, shut down or at least paused for a while until we could get the proper engineering, the proper regulations? And if not, then obviously it shouldn't be there.
Yeah, you've taken the words out of my mouth, and that's exactly what I've been asking for. And the Board of Supervisors has sent a letter to both PG&E and Vistra, asking them to not go back online. Their grids are offline right now until we have this fire investigated. We understand what has gone wrong. I mean, I don't think it's just this particular plant. We need to pause this everywhere in this country. I mean, I'm getting people reaching out to me from the East Coast, New Mexico, other places in California, the UK. I got somebody from the UK that reached out to me. Look, I'm all for moving ahead with sustainable energy. Makes a lot of sense, I think, in a lot of ways. Let's get, we've got to have batteries for that. But I've used the reference before that this is a 3 Mile Island event for this industry. And what people have to realize is nobody died at 3 Mile Island. Nobody was injured, but it was. Yep. That
we know of, because there's been conflicting reports about cancer and whatnot from 3 Mile.
I'm going on with what is generally accepted. I understand. And that's where, try to make the comparison, because what happened with 3 Mile Island is it caused a lot of skepticism of the industry. It caused new regulations come in, and it caused a pause so that we had safer nuclear energy. And this is kind of what we got to look at here. I mean, we got to step back, look at these batteries, got to find a better way to suppress fires than just letting them burn. And we have to look at some alternatives. I'm just trying to get involved and understand some of these alternatives. There's sodium ion, for example. I understand it's not as efficient, but it's not nearly as combustible. You can put it out conventionally. It's better than mining for lithium, because sodium is everywhere and it's cheaper.
Right. Let me push back a little bit when you say we're asking Vistra. Respectfully, I mean, the corporations can't run the asylum. If the county supervisors could only ask, what is the role of the state? And Governor Newsom, he's called for an investigation. I think that's kind of just lip service that he's putting out there. I'm not blaming him for this, but he has pushed this energy. So there has been accusations that he's heavy-handedly tried to go over, local county approval to push these things through. If the county can only ask, would you call on the governor to order a pause or stoppage? Some people might say that's controversial, but you're trying to protect health here, as well as potential contamination for crops that the rest of America consumes the vegetables.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. The county's role is giving those permits to go there initially. After that, we have very, very limited role. At our last supervisors meeting just a few days ago, I did call for an ad hoc committee to be formed, myself and another supervisor, and to go through and look at all the options that we possibly have. And we're going to come back in a month and see if there's any latent powers, any way we can look at things a little differently so we can come in on this. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's the state that has the control.
Simply asked, would you call on Governor Newsom to at the moment shut this plant down, to order it shut down?
It needs to be shut down. Yes. I mean, I haven't asked Newsom because I'd be doing the same thing we're doing with Fistra at this point, asking. We don't have that power. And I know he's kind of moving in that direction, but only he's looking at these older facilities. And I mean, we need to look at, I'm not saying look at the older facilities. I'm talking about supposedly there's these new batteries that are supposed to be safer. Great. That's the new technology now. 5 years ago, we had technology that said it was safe too. I'm not that gullible. You know, let's really see what's going on right here. I want to state that yes, he and others have pushed through legislation already that was passed, and I don't know when it was, last couple of years, I would say, that streamlines this so that you can bypass local input. This is an issue that's being threatened and considered down in Morro Bay, which is south of Monterey County, and the Vistra has a plant down there that they want to consider. I want to see a pause on this whole thing right now. We just need to pause till it's safe, and really take a look at things. I'm all for green, but I'm all for safety first. And one thing that's happened here is that a assembly member that covers this coast along here, she just introduced a bill yesterday that would remove that streamlining, give control back to the local community so that they're not going to be not heard and not have any control over their neighborhoods, and also to go through and not have these facilities in such environmentally sensitive areas and in other unsafe locations.
Right. And, it's been a lot of talk about democracy and democracy at risk. Well, part of democracy is several different layers of representation. So the local should have a say if they're putting the world's largest lithium battery plant in their backyard.
And that's it. I'm all for democracy. I don't care how it goes, but the people need to decide. I'm going to have to go here in just a couple of minutes. I got another meeting coming up, Brandon.
Let me wrap up by asking you the immediate, because a lot of people in the area are
Brandon. I've got your name wrong. Yeah.
No, that's okay. Let me wrap up by asking an immediate. I'll just play one clip so you could see the symptoms we're talking about.
I could see the cloud kind of above Monterey and North Monterey County, kind of out over the ocean. I realized on my face it looked like it was burned, like my cheeks and my nose, and I had kind of a large sore kind of burnt area on the side of my nose, and then on a couple little lesions. They weren't large, but they were like not really blisters, but almost like pimples or something. But the entire area of my cheeks and nose.
The fire started on Thursday, and by Friday morning I was having metallic taste, trouble breathing. So it kind of started out with that kind of stuff, not being able to breathe, coughing, the metallic taste, the headaches that do not, no matter what I take, I can't get rid of them, and dizziness. So as the days have progressed, the days that I was gone, like on Saturday, I felt fine. Came back here and felt terrible. Yesterday, I could not breathe. I just could not breathe at all when I got up. So I tried my inhaler, and I have an emergency inhaler. I don't normally have to use it. And I was using my inhaler. I could not get breath. I had to have somebody drive me to Pacific Grove, about 30 miles away, and on the beach there, just to get the breathing back to where I could actually breathe and get full breaths and everything. Oh, nosebleed, that's another one.
Obviously, you've heard this a lot from constituents, but to be clear, since I've covered this elsewhere, they're getting a lot of conflicting information, and the EPA often thinks it's enough to just post links on the internet. What you're an elected official for people that are having health symptoms? I've talked to pregnant women. I've talked to elderly. What are the resources they could get from the county and the state? Because a lot of times they go to their doctor, and regular doctors don't know how to deal or even know what they're looking for. What are the health resources for testing and care people could get?
I think that's part of the problem. I mean, we're dealing with this. I mean, the doctors don't know what's going on here in many cases, and we're still going to have that problem at the at the county level. I mean, we have doctors, we have a county hospital, It's potentially the same problem. Our environmental health people are there to go out to the environment. They're not really the people that go and treat individuals. This is part of the reason we need to pause this. I mean, look, there was smoke around here. I live within the supposed fallout zone of this all. There was a lot of smoke, and smoke's never good, whether it's wildfire or what it is, but it's surely not good when it's a chemical fire, which is really what this was.
So in a nutshell, people are kind of have to figure it out.
I would suggest, if you have concerns, you need to go to your doctor. I mean, that's going to be better than any resources that the county really has or the state really has at this point, because again, this is such a new technology. It has been run through so fast. It
sounds like people are on their own, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it kind of is. But I would suggest that everybody documents any of their health concerns, and probably the best way is with a doctor's appointment onto that. I mean, a doctor is going to know each individual case onto here better than anything that I can really offer from county resources.
Well, I just want to say, because I know you got to go, some people watching might be critical of you. I want to praise you, because too often in these situations, I hear a lot of BS from politicians simply regurgitating what the EPA and local officials say, because they're politicians and they don't want to, cause any problems. But I'd rather hear somebody say, I don't know. We don't know yet, because people just want the truth. So although it's disconcerting to hear I don't know, at least you're being honest with people in saying we don't know, and go to your doctor and document your health. And I know you've been talking to constituents, so I hope we could keep in touch as this develops. Thank you, County Supervisor Glenn Church.
Thank you, Jordan.